Alright, over the last 2 days or so since I posted my last video, things seemingly have become a lot more bearish. Bitcoin has fallen back down below this very significant range high after trying to break above it. We did see some bearishness here. There were divergences as we put in that high, and now that we've reclaimed that high, that was kind of, bearish thing number one. Bearish thing number two, now at this point, is us losing this point of control, which I just checked. It is still the point of control of the most macro range that I'm really paying attention to right now. Not only have we lost it, but we came down below it. Kind of tried to reclaim it once, but it was a failed attempt, more so a back test of it as resistance. And now we are breaking lower and quite aggressively. And before I get into like market cipher analysis or some of the key levels that I'm watching, I want to quickly go over this short trade that I took from that back test, because this worked out very nicely. There were a lot of confirmations for it. It was a high confluence trade, and yeah, I mean, so far it's worked out beautifully. I have already locked in some profits on the trade, but this is the kind of trade that could potentially really run if we start breaking lower to some lower supports. So yeah, I've taken profits, and now I'm looking to hold the rest. I'll probably take profits at some of these key levels depending on if we see a reaction. But so far I've been watching this on the 5-minute, and there have been no significant reactions besides this one. This was the only like actual pullback that we've seen, and it seems like we're still trying to move lower. Before that, we were literally just printing candles lower and lower and lower with like one blue candle here, moving lower, moving lower, moving lower, to go along with us trying to get back above this red line, this point of control, and then falling back down below it. We saw some bearish absorption, or I saw some bearish absorption when I woke up this morning. We were already down here, and I saw that a few hours earlier we had seen some bearish absorption here with price continuing to move lower. So from this high, which is the highest point of this move to the upside, that's where the absorption started. We really only technically saw absorption from here to here, with CVD putting in a higher high and open interest putting in a higher high. But then afterwards we saw a lot more longs open up. So we saw this move to the downside, but that was some of those longs closing out, which doesn't really matter. We really only need to see the longs opening up, because that is what allows for market makers to open shorts. At least that's the idea behind the theory. So CVD coming back down afterwards doesn't really matter. I still look at it as like, oh, we continued to see longs opening up all this time, even though CVD technically wasn't continuing to put in higher highs. I still kind of counted for the absorption. So yeah, again, as we started retracing here, we saw more longs opening up. We saw some more longs open up here. There were also most likely some shorts, but we keep seeing these spikes of OI with CVD getting a move to the upside, even another little one there. So yeah, people were trying to long this on the way down, I guess. And I mean, it does seem like that allowed for some market makers to open up short trades, because it got pushed pretty far down after that. And once I saw the absorption, I took a look at market cipher on the low time frames here as we put in higher highs. We saw that momentum started putting in lower highs towards the top here. There were divergences on that high. There was some sort of change of trend as well, with us putting in a lower low, putting in another lower low. And we kept retracing, moving lower, as we kept seeing direction from market cipher, money flow moving to the downside, some trigger waves in momentum. And around the time when I entered, which I think was exactly on this purple candle, we were struggling to even try and get back above this red line, this point of control. Previously we had saw moves above it, then we were just kind of holding it as resistance. But we were also possibly looking to hold some support. I mean, we kept SFPing lower and lower. This was an SFP candle, this was an SFP candle, but I saw money flow continuing lower as we were sitting here. It seemed like things were kind of continuing bearish. Like at this point, money flow put in a lower low. I think that's right before I entered, and it was. Also at the time, the point of control of this local range was a little different. If I pulled that to the candle that I entered on, I entered right around when we started to lose that point of control again. And I had a loose stop loss on it. I put it above the value area high and above this lower high here, pretty loosely above it. If we, kept holding this point of control here as support and then put in a higher high locally, I probably would have considered closing the trade out and taking like, half the loss. So yeah, I did have a loose stop, but I probably was planning on closing it out prior to actually hitting it because I was a little late to the absorption. That happened up here. There was already a good short from there. And, I was basically betting on it continuing lower after breaking the point of control. That is what happened, but, I mean, there's a chance that wouldn't have happened because I was kind of late to the party. Or at least there's a chance that I was late, but nah, in this case, I was not. So now let's do a very quick run through a market cipher. I don't want to spend too much time doing this. I want to get to my significant levels and try and get this uploaded as soon as possible. But yeah, in the weekly, we do see the VWAP starting to turn to the downside. We have printed a new weekly candle. And already, I mean, we're seeing a little bit of bearishness with the VWAP turning to the downside. But money flow is continuing higher. There's definitely a chance that momentum continues higher despite the VWAP pointing down. Sometimes it can take a long time for it to actually reach the zero line and for momentum to top out. But we are seeing a little bit more bearishness from that weekly. The daily time frame has topped out and momentum is moving lower, even technically putting in a lower low because we had a red dot followed by a low here before the green dot. Then we came down to take out that higher low. But still, money flow on the daily is still putting in higher highs. But the fact that we have slipped down below the 60 line is a sign of bearishness as well. Now, the money flow on those higher time frames was still looking pretty good. However, you get to the 4 hour, and this is not looking like good in terms of the money flow. Unless you're short, then it is looking good because money flow is crossing to the downside. It has turned purple, and this is like a very aggressive move down with money flow. Momentum has locally put in a lower low, and we just printed another red dot here. Possibly it's looking to continue lower. And, just looking at the overall state of the 4 hour money flow, this seems like it could certainly be a overall, turn to the downside with money flow. The direction with momentum is there as well. Even if momentum comes back up, we could just print a lower high. Pretty much same thing on the 3 hour. Yeah, we saw the divergences at the high, and now we are seeing continuation to the downside with momentum putting in lower lows. And money flow still moving to the downside. It has already crossed into the red, and it actually got back into the green here. But we can look at the lower time frames to see if this is likely an unsustainable move back into the green. Because if like the 1 hour or the 30-minute money flow is already kind of crossing back to the downside after getting back in the green, that can kind of foreshadow what may happen with the 3 hours. So let's go down in time frames. 2 hour money flow turning to the downside. That's really all I need to see here. Momentum is the exact same deal. 1 hour money flow putting in lower lows in the red, so that is a sign of weakness. I would assume that the 3 hour money flow probably crossed back into the green somewhere around this time as money flow is turning back to the upside. Let's kind of just put a vertical line there and see. Yeah, I guess that is right around when it crossed into the green. So we are seeing that this little attempt at upward movement on the 1 hour has failed because it put in a lower low. So that, is kind of what I was looking for in the lower time frames. And yeah, 30 minutes, same deal. We had this move to the upside, but now money flow is moving back to the downside pretty aggressively. Still hasn't put in a lower low, but it is still continuing to move to the downside. And on the 15-minute, money flow got back into the green as well, and it has crossed back into the purple. There is still potentially direction here with the money flow. You could argue that we're starting to curve to the upside, but that could be invalidated by money flow just kind of continuing lower afterwards. Sometimes you kind of extend these overall curvatures. Really, the conclusion there is that we're seeing bearish signs. I don't think there is many signs of strength here. I think, if we are going to try and reverse this price back to the upside at any point, it'd probably take a while. I think we'd have to, maybe range a bit and then form some kind of divergences after taking out a low. Otherwise, it does seem pretty likely to me that we will continue lower to try and find support elsewhere. But maybe that comes relatively locally. We are pretty close to one significant area of confluence right here, which is taking out all of the higher lows that we've seen since Friday, the 20th of September, and possibly hitting into this area of confluence with the value area high of this, I guess we'll call it the mid time frame range, which I do have pulled from this SFP candle down here. I'm looking at it as the range that we formed since this SFP, but you could maybe try a different pull, maybe pull it to something more locally. And I guess the value area high is a bit different depending on the pull. So, maybe you want to go for the wider box, maybe take both of these value area highs. For this, I think I would really need to see, some kind of bullishness locally into this box, maybe divergences, something else, and then a reclaim of this low right here. I want to see us kind of reclaim this local range. Otherwise, if we just kind of fall into it and things are kind of looking sketchy and we just keep moving lower, there's a good chance that we just break down to lower support. And here is another zone that I'm going to draw a box around. I can pull up the coordinates for these, I guess. So that's my box number 2, and this is my box number 1. This is some confluence with some fib levels. We got the 382 of the higher time frame pull from this low up to this high, and there is a more local golden pocket from here to here. And this is confluence with a very important level. Right around 60,450, we got an NDPOC right on top of the value area low of the macro range. So that is hidden behind that NDPOC a little bit. So there's confluence with this box. I kind of like this area. But again, we have to consider that we did just take out a range high. This kind of thing, paired with the divergences, the weakness that we saw, and now the follow through, could mean that a larger range rotation is in play, right? So we may just come down to some of these supports to temporarily bounce before moving lower. We have to look at the context of this range, and a range rotation back to the downside is certainly possible. But I'm still going to mark out the zones of support for if we happen to see something really bullish in any of these areas. They may make for, temporary bounces, just like, little scalp trades, or maybe they end up actually being a reversal where we can start reclaiming some of these key levels again. The next box I like is right here. Got some more confluence with fib levels and the point of control. So that is another area of interest for me. Those are the coordinates. And while we're at it, we might as well mark out this one down here as well. I will just draw a big box around this area. We got a golden pocket in between two untapped daily levels. However, with this one, I am going to say the same thing that I said last time. I think I like these ones a bit more than this zone down here, just for the simple fact that these are either above the value area low of the more macro range, or they're within SFP distance. Like, we could come down, maybe spend some time down here on the lower time frames, but on the daily or even the weekly, it just ends up being a wick down to that area. I would really be looking at this area as more of like a temporary bounce zone than any of the other ones, and I'd probably be targeting things like the point of control for like local TPs than the value area low, because we could just come up and backtest either of these zones, especially if we approach this after like spending a lot of time below both of these key zones. Like, if we take forever to get there and then we get a bounce into there, maybe then it's only like a temporary reversal before continuing lower. And if we're really going to get like a wick all the way down here, it's probably going to be a very aggressive move, something that I would probably consider untradeable, unless there like just so happens to be some very low time frame divergences and we get a very nice reaction from either of these two zones. It's not often that I play that knife catching game unless there's like really good confirmations to go along with it. But might as well mark out the zone anyway. And I think that's where I'm going to leave it, because I've been yapping for a long time, and this is going to take a while to edit, and I want to get this out ASAP. But, one more thing, let's check locally. Seems like we're continuing to try and move lower. We have been seeing a bit of buying here with these wicks, but they haven't even really been able to reclaim this low. We've only seen wicks above this low back here, so it seems like we may be wanting to move lower here. I'm going to try and get this uploaded and out as fast as possible. Thank you everybody for watching. If you enjoyed, consider leaving a like, subscribing, leaving a comment, all of that. It helps to support my channel, and I appreciate it. And I'll see you all in the next one.